Welcome to episode 27 of Out of Bounds, a podcast where I give my social commentary on different topics in today's society. I'm your host, Terry, and today we're talking about the question of, should parents be friends with their kids? Can parents be friends with their kids? I mean, the answer to that of can they be is yes. We've seen that many a times, but is that appropriate? Is that the right thing to do? Now, I would start off by saying that's a very broad question. And so the answer probably is going to be more complicated than just yes or no. And it's probably going to be more broken up into phases of when things are appropriate and when they're not. And I'm informed, of course, by the way I was brought up, by my experience with parenting and all that. So just that disclaimer as well. But when you're talking about being friends with your kids, so what exactly does that mean? Because I think most parents tend to think, yeah, I'm somebody my child would trust and somebody they would want to confide in or, feel safe with, all those good things, which is typically associated with being a friend. But what are we really talking about? And so I think when I'm asked the question of a parent being a friend, you're talking about those parents that treat their kids at an equal level as them, and do things with them that they would do with other friends. And so, the way they talk to each other, the things they talk about, the way they hang out, the activities they choose to do, all those different things. And so, for me personally, this kind of came up for me the first time, I would say, when I was in undergrad in college. And one of the first things that I noticed that was different, because I was at a predominantly white institute, one of the first things I noticed that was different, because there were, Caucasian people in my high school, of course. And so it's not like I never had experience. But one thing I've noticed being around these type of Caucasian people that were maybe from more well-off suburbs and things of that nature is that their parents would constantly either come down to visit them or that they would always send them stuff. And so it'd be like kind of what you see on TV for the typical air quote college life. Oh, let me call my mom. I need some money. Or, oh, I'm running low on this. Let me make sure I hit my parents for a care package or whatever. And then whenever their parents would come, they would always go to dinner. Always go to dinner. Every single time. It was like, oh, my parents are coming down, having dinner with them. And I don't know. I don't think it's not normal, but it's just, to me, it wasn't what I knew. And so it was so different to me. And that was one of the first things I noticed, that their parents were involved for the most part, not everybody, of course, but a lot of the people I knew in college, their parents were involved a lot more frequently than mine were. Like, I saw my parents a handful of times while I was in college, but outside of that, when I was with my rugby teammates to play rugby, and one of the things that weirded me out early on was that they would drink with their parents. And so we would have these things called socials after games where it was pretty much like a little party. You get a keg and all this stuff. And it's typically the two teams would get together and just hang out. And, friends and family are invited, but I would say not until maybe my sophomore or junior year when I really started seeing people's parents come. And I was just like, oh, that's awkward. We can't act like we want to act. But then I would see guys acting the exact same way with their parents, sharing drinks with their dad, hugging and getting drunk together, yelling, being goofy. And I was just like, I could never, ever see myself doing that. Never in a million years could I see myself doing that. Like, even if that's what, I don't think my parents would want to, but even if that's what they want, I would never do that. I'm like, the fact that y'all are so comfortable to do that just blows my mind. And so, again, that's more my own personal experience. But I would think overall, there is a cultural divide like there usually is about things of that nature. But there kind of is the myth, this whole, as we always say, this black and white myth. It's like, oh, white people, privileged people, whatever, their parents aren't really strict, or they don't like demand respect the same way, and they want to be their kids' friends. Like, okay, they want to make them happy and please them. And that all black parents are very strict, and it's like, don't disrespect me, you're a kid, stay in the kid's place and all that. And there is truth to it, of course, like all things, but it's not consistent. Especially, I would say, in the black culture, as I say, not a whole race thing of African American, but if you're talking about the disenfranchised culture, the lower income culture, and people that grow up in that type of socioeconomic class, there is very prevalent people that treat their kids as complete equals. At the same time, trying to demand respect, but treat them as complete equals. And so what that looks like is you have parents leaning on their children and offspring to be responsible adults alongside them because they don't have enough capital to do it themselves. And so sometimes that is people out of necessity of not having the money. Sometimes that's people not being mature and ready to be a parent. And so they have the kids really young, or they have the kids at a time when they're not mature mentally to handle it. And so what that looks like is a kid and you wonder why kids are working jobs while they're in junior high school, because they got to pay bills. There's bills in their name. They got to bring home food to help out with the rest of the family, or they got to go pick up their younger siblings and bring them back home. They're responsible for that, or they're responsible for cleaning the house while making sure this is done and this is done, because sometimes either the parents are working so many hours that they're not around, or that the parents just aren't responsible enough to handle it themselves. And so you do within that culture have a lot of classical, not classical, but kind of your traditional viewpoints where I am an adult, I'm in a certain lane, you are my child, you're in a certain lane. You respect me, you listen to me, you do as you're told. And then there is other places where they say, hey, respect me, but the way I'm going to treat you is not the same as if I'm an adult and you're a child. I'm treating you like you're an adult. Like, hey, where's the money this month? Where's your check at? How come you didn't pick up these groceries? How come you didn't take care of this? How come you didn't do that? And so these children are placed with a lot of adult responsibilities, and they are treated as an adult, but they're supposed to have respect like a child, and it doesn't work out. And then you have the even worse level where some parents just really want to be friends with their kids and they just want to kick it. They treat them like, hey, yeah, maybe they have to pay bills, maybe they have to work and everything, but then they come home and the parents are like, yeah, you know, you're on my level. You doing the same thing I'm doing. You an adult. Here, smoke this with me. Take a drink. Take a load off. Yeah, we having a party this weekend and you could be here because now they look at you as like a friend. Like me and you in this together. And how healthy is that for a developing child? And so there's a lot of spectrums to it, but I do want to break that myth that, and especially people of color or people from those disenfranchised backgrounds try to act like doesn't exist, where they'll be like, hey, yeah, no, some people just, oh, I'm not no white parent, or I'm just not letting my kid run around and do whatever. But the truth is that stuff does happen. there's a lot of absentee parenting going on where you don't know where your kid is. They are out in the streets, and because you're not home enough, you're not able to be home enough to watch them, or that they're doing things because you're relying on them to move about like an adult and contribute to the household. And so there's a lot of that going on both sides. So what it all comes down to, the question again, should parents be friends with their kids? And I think I've changed my mind on this over the years, where I've generally felt like no, it should always be that line. I don't care if I'm 40 and my parent is, 60 something, 70. It doesn't matter. Like, it needs to be that respect of, this is the adult, this is the parent, and I'm the child. You're always going to be their kid or their children, even if you're not a kid. But then I've kind of changed that. I mean, to me, it was a very defensive reaction when I was in college to say, wow, oh no, Caucasian people, oh, that's how they do it. Yeah, they're friends and they're probably buddy. They probably always been like that. And that's not fair. I don't know. Some of them probably have always been buddy, because there's parents that want to give their kid everything and they want to be their friend. But then there's some that like, no, I grew up, my parents were tough on me. They were strict. I understood my place. But once I grew up and started making correct decisions, as I continued to get older, they gave me more responsibility. And as I continued to make good decisions and accomplish things, then our relationship began to evolve. And that's the thing. It's like, it was always like your relationship has to be this, strict and, segregated, or it has to be this, loose and all over the place. But the truth is, things can change and evolve just like we can as people. And so when you put in that context where if you're a parent right now, a young parent, or you thinking about becoming a parent, you can get to a point where your relationship evolves and you no longer have to be what you used to be. Because I think it is important to be the parent and the disciplinarian and the guide for that child early on. And as somebody that worked in public schools and throughout education, I would tell you more times than not, the ones that have those issues are people with no strong households, where it's parents that are cutting up and acting just like teenagers and don't know how to role model, a stable adult role model. And so the kids see that stuff's okay at home. They think it's okay in the school, and who's going to tell me different when my own mom acts like that? Or they got people that aren't even looking for them. And it's like, nobody's giving me direction. So why should I have to listen to you? I live on my own, basically. I do whatever I want. Why do I have to listen to people in school? And so more times than not, it's always those type of family dynamics that produce children that have those type of issues. And so it's important as you are younger, and I worked with high schoolers, but it's even more important as they're younger to be that disciplinarian, to show them, to guide them. Because as I always say, we're born into this world, we don't know anything. And then we learn from what we see. We mimic what we see, and it is the parents' job to show right from wrong and to guide students, kids in this case. And so as kids, the only way to be truly respected, to get things done, to understand, is to have that delineation that we're not on the same line. Because I've seen parents, like I said, that will pull I'm the adult card, but you can tell they don't actually discipline their kids. They don't actually role model that to their kids. So the kids roll their eyes like, yeah, whatever. You're the adult. I'm taking care of you most of the time. And they can't really tell these kids anything, especially by high school. It's over. And so you understand the importance, after seeing stuff like that, you understand the importance of creating that line of separation. There's a line of being appropriate. There's a line of what you should be able to role model as a parent. And then as they grow, then it can evolve. And then you can continue to let them prove that they understood the things you taught them. Let them prove that they are at a maturing stance where they can handle more responsibility and they can handle being treated differently. Because look, I have two parents, and so the whole two-parent household thing isn't automatic. You have parents that never evolve. They always going to treat you like a little kid. And so that creates a different type of dynamic. But there is a way where you can get to that point where you go out to have drinks with your parents, where you know, the things you talk about, a more adult or whatever, because you allowed your child to mature to that place. You didn't do everything for them and drag them there. You didn't completely distance yourself like we're never going to be equals. You let the relationship mature and develop. And I think a lot of people miss that. I think a lot of people end up on that extreme where it's like this disciplinarian role. And a lot of people say, well, African American parents, we can't afford to be our kids' friend because there's too much stuff out there that can hurt them. And if we relax, then they're going to slip up. And I don't know if I agree with that. I used to understand that, and I still do understand it to an extent, but I don't agree with that. And I agree that we don't need to start off being their friends for day one. Like, hey, I'm your best friend. No, you're their parent. You have a responsibility, but that doesn't mean we can't ever get to that point. And so go back to the question, should parents be friends with their kids? I don't think they should until a certain age. And I think over time, there are different things that are more appropriate for you to do and to talk with your kids. But I don't think that should all happen from day one. And I don't think you have to wait all the way until they're 30 and married with their own kids for it to happen either. I do think there's a progression that can happen with a mature, healthy relationship with the parents. And I still do believe it's very important early on for parents to establish themselves as guides, as people the kids can confide in, but also the authoritarian. Because look, at the end of the day, you can't make them do much, especially as they get older. They have to have, it's the whole line of fear and respect. They have to believe in your ability at some point to then listen to what you have to say. Because you can do the typical, quote unquote black thing, as some people say. And a lot of other cultures do it too, but you can do the typical, this is my house. You want to live under my roof, you're going to live by my rules. Okay, the problem with that is as soon as they're not under your roof, all that goes out the window. So there's a difference between getting compliance and buy-in. And that's a whole business thing, but you can get compliance. You can have people do what you want because you're using coercive, maneuvers saying, look, I got this money or I got this house. I control this. So you do what I want. And then there's a difference between that and explaining it to somebody to where they understand and believe in the same things you're saying, because then that's going to stay with them over time. But anyway, go to comment section. Let me know what you think. Should parents be friends with their kids at any point? Is it a certain point, or should you always be friends? Let me know what you think. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and until next episode.